Good morning. It is Tuesday, May 16th. Welcome to the Montgomery County Council. We have two presentations before us this morning before we get to general business. And the first is a proclamation recognizing American Craft Beer Week, and that will be presented by Council members Luedtke and Fanny Gonzalez.
Good morning. So I want to thank everybody who's come today, and I want to ask you to come on down for this portion of the program. So you get to, and I'm going to announce everybody who's here. If I miss your name, just tap me and I'll make sure I say it. But from Astrolab Brewing, we have Emma Whelan, Brookville Beer Farm, Kenny Borkman and Phil Muth, Landmaid Brewery, Gabriel Scott, Lone Oak, Chris and Ralph Miller, True Respite, Brendan O'Leary, and Wardaka, Jessica, and Brett Snyder. Thank you for joining us today. Whoop. Don't knock over the microphone. Yeah, I'm good. So thank you, Council President Glass, for and everyone here for celebrating American Craft Beer Week. And do we have any folks here today from ABS? Anybody? No. Okay, because I was going to ask them to come on down too. I am really fortunate to represent District 7 here on the council, which, as the folks here have heard me say, when people want to know where my district is in Montgomery County, I say the land of the beer farms, because that is, in fact, where my district is. And aside from the beer, these locations, whether they're up county or whether they're in downtown Silver Spring, are a vital part of our community. They bring community together, and they collaborate with other small businesses, which has been really wonderful for me to see over time as we all work to enhance our economic development in the county. So a few weeks ago, actually no, Chris told me it was over a month ago, but time's flying, I got to visit Lone Oak after the fall of the lone oak tree following a storm. And I urge everyone to take a look at the video that we made out there that talks about the history of that property and sort of the new legacy of what will come from the buds of that oak, which now, as he showed me this morning, they grafted many pieces trying to hope that they would be able to salvage part of the lone oak to replant on the property, and 2 of them took, and they have leaves. So I'm optimistic that the lone oak's legacy will carry on. I want to thank, and Julie's not here, right, Julie Verratti? But I do want to thank Julie Verratti from Denizens and Emily Bruno from Denizens for being the first production brewery in our county. It took a lot of work for them to get up and running. It took a lot of work for them to get local and state laws changed in order to facilitate this business, and look at the industry that's grown from that. And it will continue to benefit entrepreneurs for years to come. So thank you to all of you for the work that you do. And I know, please know that we are all partners to you in your work, and we're here to help and assist you. And now, turn it over to Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So local craft beer breweries are a lot of fun and contribute so much to the quality of life of our residents. From Silver Spring, Kensington, Rockville, and Gettysburg, all the way to Poolesville, Laytonsville, and Brookville, these breweries provide the community amazing space to gather, not just for adults, but with our little ones. And I've been to pretty much every single one of your breweries with my children and my husband. Our local breweries are also provide a lot of investment in jobs into our community. My predecessors on the council and in the state delegation did a lot of the early hard work to create a better, more hospitable regulatory environment. The results are overwhelmingly clear. We have a thriving craft beer ecosystem here in the county. But we are not done, and you can be assured that from my position as chair of the Economic Development Committee, that that we will hold DPS accountable, and I have been doing lots of tours with DPS, including in some of the breweries. They're not here, the one that I'm thinking of. But we're going to make sure that they are seen as allies with a yes culture instead of being an agency that creates more challenges when you want to do something great for our community. But the real heroes of this story are the entrepreneurs that you see here. They had a vision and determination. In some cases, they risked everything to follow that dream. These folks and their incredible businesses are just one of the reasons I am so proud to call Montgomery County home. I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge Astrolab, as Emma and Matt will be moving on to new adventures, and the best of luck in your future endeavors. And I hear in Potomac you're going to have a battle. You're going to talk about it, right? Hopefully. But you're going to stay in Montgomery County. And it's not like they are leaving. I mean, there's another brewery that is coming in. So that's a very important point to make. And with that, I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Councilmember Luckey, to introduce the next speakers. So thank you.
Thank you. And I left one name off my list. So I also want to welcome Christian Lake from Silver Branch Brewing, who's standing right behind me. And now I'd like to welcome Jessica Snyder from Waradaka to say some words.
Good morning. Thank you so much for honoring the Montgomery County Breweries today. We all very much appreciate the long-standing support of the County Council from all of the breweries, including some that aren't here today. Astrolab, Baby Cat, Brookville Beer Farm, Denizens, Elder Pine, Landmaid, Lone Oak, Seven Locks, Silver Branch, Saints Row, True Respite, and Wardaka, with more that are coming. As a group, Montgomery County Breweries continue to grow and positively impact our communities and local economy. Montgomery County Breweries matter. We provide jobs and taxable revenue. We are considered an asset to the tourism industry, and our tap rooms and products sold locally help to keep residents spending dollars in our county. Montgomery County Breweries care. At our heart, we are gathering places for community engagement, events, and celebrations with family and friends. We are passionate about the environment and Maryland agriculture. We give back and support countless charities and nonprofit organizations. Each Montgomery County brewery is independently owned and operated as small businesses, and small businesses continue to be the heartbeat of the Montgomery County economy. Thank you so much for recognizing our impact, our hard work, and our contributions to the Montgomery County. Cheers to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'll bring up Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez so we can read the proclamation.
The County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland proclamation. Whereas American Craft Beer Week was established in 2006 to recognize and celebrate small and independent breweries who have greatly impacted the beer world, and whereas as of 2021, the Maryland craft beer breweries have produced 288,130 barrels of beer annually, contributing approximately $917 million to the local economy. And whereas Montgomery County's 15 craft breweries have demonstrated how these local businesses can help fuel our economy, boost our food system through encouraging agritourism, and support other small businesses through food truck nights, concerts, and other events. And
whereas many craft breweries provide outdoor gathering spaces, delivered products directly to consumers, and embarked on other creative ways to provide a safe outlet for residents to gather during the COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas adults in Montgomery County can responsibly enjoy and appreciate locally made beer with fellow craft beer lovers during American Craft Beer Week from May 15th to 21st, further enhancing their ties to the community and our agricultural roots. Now therefore be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby recognizes American Craft Beer Week and honors those in the craft beer industry for their role in our economy. We commit to serving our county's craft brewers in the same spirit of service through which they tirelessly grow, care for, and provide their local beer to Montgomery County residents. Presented on this 16th day of May in the year 2023.
Well, cheers to that. Thank you very much for joining us at the council this morning, and thank you for all the joy and entertainment each of you bring to our community. The next proclamation is to designate May 2023 as Discover MoCo Month, and that will be led by Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. So thank you all for coming. We're here to celebrate Discover MoCo Month. We live in a great community. We have so many wonderful assets, and I'm sure all my colleagues will agree that one of the great things about this job is that we get to go and visit all these wonderful places, sometimes all in one weekend, but we're always out and about. I'd like to ask our guests to come up. Kelly Groff, Visit MoCo, and her staff. Katie Hecklinger from Black Rock Center for the Arts. Matt Libber from the Soccerplex. And we have a couple people from our economic development team, MCEDC, come up. And our breweries, please come on back up. It's gonna be a big crowd. You can scooch up and double rows, and so it's great to have our breweries here. And I would like to tell you that Councilmember Don Lukey and I were genius enough to have these proclamations on the same day, but it was just sheer coincidence, and it was a lovely coincidence to have our breweries here for Celebrate MoCo Week. Visit Montgomery is a leader in highlighting the many attractions, breweries, eateries, historical sites, and natural resources located across Montgomery County, which is truly the state's cultural capital. Montgomery County is home to so many amazing tourist destinations in the state, and Visit Montgomery plays a huge part in promoting Montgomery County as a destination worth visiting. Visit Montgomery's Discover MoCo Month is a great way for visitors and residents to learn about and celebrate the rich Montgomery County community by enjoying all the assets we have, immersing ourselves in the history through visiting our museums, spending time in the beautiful outdoor spaces, including the Ag Reserve, and shopping small at our so many thousands of local businesses. So to talk a little bit about Visit Montgomery, I'm going to ask Kelly Groff to come up, the Executive Director of Visit Montgomery.
Good morning. Thank you, Councilmember Balcom. Thank you, Council President Glass, and all members of the County Council. Marilyn said everything well, so all my notes are gone. So I'm going to wing this. Let me first introduce who's with me today. Staff members, Lee Calicut, Yodit Kirabel, Corey Van Horn, Letitia Engel, friends from MCEDC, and Trek Buchter from our staff. And it's really exciting to also have the breweries here behind us today. So tourism is economic development, and our mission as an organization, which is celebrating its 40th year, is to make sure our residents, whether they're in the county or regional partners and visitors, millions of which we welcome every year, come to our community and have a wonderful time while they're here. Two of the largest generators of hotel room nights that bring business to Montgomery County are standing behind me. David Child, who manages the county's asset, the Bethesda North Marriott Hotel and Conference Center, and Matt Libber from the Maryland Soccerplex, who welcomes over 700,000 visitors a year just at his facility. I'm sorry, 1 million. So these are great partners, as well as the wineries and breweries. We proudly represent you. We are always pitching stories to travel writers, to magazines, as well as event and meeting planners that are considering our community. So please discover MoCo this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And I just want to big plug for her staff. I've worked with the Visit Montgomery for many, many years, and they do such a fabulous job. So thank you so much. I now want to introduce Katie Hecklinger, the Executive Director of Black Rock Center for the Arts.
Good morning, and thank you to the council, especially Marilyn Balcom, who continues to be an up-county and arts warrior. in our sector. I'm excited to be here today. Arts and culture are essential to our quality of life. They are not an add-on or an extra. A thriving arts and culture scene delivers on jobs, tourism, visibility, and relevance. When people connect with a place, there is a desire to visit, to return, to invest, and to make it home. BlackRock's founders 20 years ago were celebrating this weekend with a Lone Oak beer. Marilyn, being one of those founders, understood this, and as she puts it, the community insisted on BlackRock serving Germantown as its city center, now one of our nation's most diverse communities in the country. To truly discover MoCo is to better understand the importance of investing in the beauty of everyday life and how we experience it through a language we all have in common, the arts. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I want to bring up Matt Libber from the Maryland Soccerplex. Matt.
Councilmember Balcom, members of the County Council, thanks for recognizing tourism as an important factor in Montgomery County. As Kelly pointed out, the Soccerplex alone brings in about 1 million visitors a year. Just today, we're finishing up a 5-day event that brought 5,000 athletes and 20,000 spectators to the county. And when those people are in the county, they're spending money in our county at our breweries, at our art centers. They're staying in hotels with David, and they're spending money in our businesses. The Soccerplex brings in about $37 million a year in economic activity to this county. Sports tourism as a whole is a $44.5 billion industry. To give you a comparison, the NFL is $16 billion. So these are the activities that we want to bring to the county and keep doing it to make us a thriving community.
That deserves an applause, guys. Come on. Thank you. So if you please check out Visit MoCo. If you haven't checked out their website, it's fabulous. And they also have an app, so please make sure that that's a regular, that you're checking that regularly and visiting all the wonderful, wonderful places. And so I'm excited to present this proclamation today for designating May as Discover MoCo Month. All right, these tend to be long. Sorry. Whereas Montgomery County is the most visited destination in Maryland with hospitality, tourism, recreational, sports, cultural, and entertainment sectors that contribute significantly to the state economy. And whereas Visit Montgomery has planned a month-long celebration of Montgomery County's entrepreneurial spirit that will be a significant driver of tourism and boost the county's economy through May. And whereas National Small Business Week, April 30th through May 6th, was deemed Shop MoCo Week and highlighted small businesses unique to our county. And whereas National Travel and Tourism Week, May 7th through the 13th, was deemed MoCo Hotel Week and encouraged visitation at Montgomery County throughout lodging stays at the county's hotel properties. And whereas May 14th through 20th this week, Visit Montgomery's third annual MoCo Eats Week will celebrate the culinary diversity in local restaurants that is reflective of Montgomery County's diverse population. And whereas May 21st through 31st, MoCo's Kickoff to Summer Week will spotlight unique attractions, experiences, world-class performance venues, renowned museums, and encourage tourism in Montgomery all summer long. Whereas Montgomery County's craft beverage producers will feature all month throughout Visit Montgomery's Tastemakers Trail. Now therefore be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby designates May 2023 as Discover MoCo Month, signed by Council President Eva Glantz and myself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for those presentations and celebrations this morning. I will now turn it over to Madam Clerk. Do you have any agenda changes or announcements?
Good morning, Council President, Council Vice President, Council members. We just have one agenda change to announce today. On our consent calendar, we've added item number I, action, supplemental appropriation to the county government's FY23 operating budget, Department of Health and Human Services, DHHS COVID-19 emergency response, $5 million. The source of funds is general fund undesignated revenues. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll hear from you again later this morning. So the clerk has circulated the minutes for March 21st, April 13th, April 18th, and April 25th, and minutes from a closed session meeting from April 11th. Are there any changes? Not hearing any changes. Those are approved. We're now going to move into Legislative Day 16 and call of bills for final reading. The first bill is Bill 1423, Late Night Business Safety Plan. The Public Safety Committee recommends enactment with amendments. I will turn it over to the Chair of the Public Safety Committee, Chair Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I want to thank you, not only as being Mr. President here, but in your role in working with us on this late night legislation. I also want to publicly thank Councilmember Stewart, Councilmember Giwando, and all of our staffs. I was included in that, as well as the county executive, and especially Dr. Earl Stoddard, who I see there he is. He snuck in the room a couple seconds ago. Chief Jones and Captain Reed from the police department, and all other departments as well. And of course, we want to very publicly thank Ms. Wellens, who worked with us literally tirelessly to get us here today. This legislation was done to help businesses be successful, at the same time keeping our residents and our businesses safe. After much discussion at our Public Safety Committee, we did have a 3-0 vote with some amendments. And Mr. President, if it meets with your approval, I'm going to turn it back to you if you would ask others to speak, whose names I have mentioned and others beyond, and then turn it back to Ms. Wellens to lead us through the legislation and amendments.
I think that sounds like a great plan. I believe that Councilmember Stewart would like to make some opening comments as well before we turn it over to Ms. Wellens to walk us through.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I want to add my thanks to those that Chair Katz mentioned, and particularly to extend my thanks to the Public Safety Committee for doing all the work that you did on the bill that was sent over to us from the county exec's office. Very much appreciate that. As Chair Katz said, this is so important to help our businesses succeed, as well as provide for our whole community. We want to make sure that throughout our county, people are able to live, work, and play. And play sometimes means later in the evening for some folks. And I was actually able to, on this Friday night, last Friday night, be in downtown Silver Spring from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. So that I could experience some of the late night that we have in our county. And I was glad to see some of the businesses, some of the work that they've been already doing with our local police department and other county offices to really make sure that they're operating safely and our entire community can enjoy. And so I'm looking forward to the conversation on this and moving forward with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wellens, you want to walk us through the committee recommendations?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Council President and Vice President and council members, and good morning. So the Public Safety Committee, as was mentioned, thoroughly reviewed the bill and made some recommended amendments. The committee also thoroughly discussed a particular issue about the definition of late night business that would be subject to the bill, and I'll get to that in a moment, but it is an issue for which the Public Safety Committee has asked for the assistance of the full council. let me briefly summarize the amendments that were adopted 3-0 by the committee. There are, well, preliminarily, this bill requires late night safety plans for certain types of businesses in coordination with the county government. The Public Safety Committee adopted amendments to define businesses that are subject to the bill, to include those with licenses for on-site cannabis consumption, in addition to, as the original bill stated, licenses for tobacco, alcohol, or food. Looking towards the future, cannabis was included. The committee decided that the bill should apply countywide, as opposed to being limited to certain priority areas identified by the county police department. So the bill would have a countywide application. The committee voted to explicitly include multiple departments in the development of regulations and implementation of the safety plans under the bill, and also required various departments to provide training to the late night businesses. Voted to eliminate the requirement that a business with a safety plan requiring video surveillance must share that surveillance with the police department when there's not a warrant present. Of course, it would still be required when a warrant is present. An amendment to permit late night businesses to appeal any plan disapprovals to the Board of Appeals, so that there will be an administrative appeal process instead of going straight to the courts. Of course, the Board of Appeals decision could then be appealed to the courts if desired. An amendment to create a grant program to support the implementation of late night business safety programs. An amendment to expedite the bill, and also an amendment to adopt a transition clause to allow for late night businesses that are subject to the bill to have an on-ramp and have time to develop the plans before they're subject to the law's requirements. The issue that the committee has asked for the full council to weigh in on, again, relates to the definition of late night businesses, and specifically their hours of operation. As originally introduced, the bill would apply to certain businesses that operate anytime between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. The committee decided that 6 a.m. Would be over-inclusive and include, for example, early opening diners, and decided that that time should be moved to 5 a.m. instead. So that was a definitive position of the committee, but they also discussed two options regarding the definitions. The first option, supported by Councilmember Juwanda, was to have just a clear line of any business operating anytime between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. that has one of the licenses I previously mentioned and has the on-site consumption would be deemed a late night business and required to do the plan. The second option, which was supported by Council Members Stewart, Chair Katz, and the Council President, sorry, I knew there was someone else there, was to have kind of a twofold definition. One, that any business with one of the licenses with on-site consumption that operates between the hours of 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. would be deemed a late night business, would have to do a safety plan. But in addition to that, if there is a business that operates between midnight and 2 a.m. and has been the subject of 2 or more service calls for law enforcement to respond to serious incidents during the prior 12 months, then those businesses also would come under the umbrella and have to provide a late night plan. The serious incidents would include certain serious crimes that would be identified by the police department through method 2 regulations. With your permission, Mr. President, I wanted to invite Dr. Stoddard, who could help the council discern which path it wants to take as well.
Good morning.
Good morning. Do you have any opening comments, Dr. Stoddard, or do you want to engage if we
I just wanted to say I very much appreciate the work of both the Public Safety Committee and the council members who participated in this process. This is frankly how the legislative process should work. A proposal is made, amendments, public hearing is had, amendments are made based on that public input, and we get to the point we are today where we have some decisions and hopefully a final product. So thank you very much to the council.
Thank you, and I agree with you that this is the deliberative legislative process, and Ms. Wellens, thank you for that detailed report out. Colleagues, we have an option before us that the Public Safety Committee has requested our input on before we take final action. Option 1, as noted, defines late night business for any business operating between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. To shorthand it. And then option 2 defines late night business as operating between 2 and 5 a.m. Or if a business operating between 12 a.m. and 2 a.m. Is the subject of 2 or more service calls. Is that correct, Ms. Wellens? Okay. And so let me just start by saying we want all of our residents and patrons to be safe and to feel safe when they're out in our community. And over the last number of years, there have been some very unsettling incidents late at night, and that is the reason this legislation has been put forward. There were a lot of alternatives, lots of discussion about how to make our patrons and residents feel safe, and how to get our business owners to be even better business owners late in the middle of the night to make everybody feel safe. And I appreciate Dr. Stoddart and the county executive putting forward this proposal. I'll say I don't think this is a perfect proposal, but it gets us closer to helping create some parameters around businesses and around a time of day where there aren't a whole lot of parameters. A lot of the incidents that have occurred over the last number of years that have been unsettling to so many people, so many of my immediate neighbors, happened during the witching hours between 2 and 5 a.m. And when people wake up and see on the news things that have happened, they contacted us, they contacted me, and here we are. Just 3 weeks ago, I went on a ride-along with the members of the 3rd District and the east side of the county. And between 12 and 2, 3 o'clock, we drove around the greater downtown Silver Spring area from White Oak South, just seeing what was going on a regular weeknight. And there was activity, there were people out. It was a relatively quiet night, but I saw firsthand some of the concerns that residents have. And we have to do something to make the situation better. And I think that this is one way to tackle that and to address those concerns. Now, for the options that are before us, let me say 2 things. One, I disagree with the committee proposal to make this county-wide. I don't think late night businesses in all parts of the county face the same situation, but I respect the committee's recommendation as much as I might disagree with it. I think we should use our resources where they are needed. But with respect to the question before us, businesses that serve alcohol are legally allowed to be open till 2. There is nothing out of order for them to operate until 2. And what the objective of this legislation has been to put some parameters around businesses that are operating outside of the normal scope of rules, regulations, and laws. And that happens to be between 2 and 5 a.m. And for that reason, I will support option number 2, so that we use our resources where they're most needed. And if there are businesses that are violating rules, regulations, or laws between 12 and 2, they need to be put on notice. And according to option 2, they would be subject to this law. But I do not think that we should apply this to businesses that are operating legally between the hours of 12 and 2, using their alcohol permit within the scope of jurisdiction. This is to help put parameters around those that are not operating within the rules. And so for that reason, I will support option number 2. Councilmember Sales.
Just want to thank you, Mr. President. Want to thank my colleagues for introducing this legislation to respond to some of the concerns that our residents have faced in the uptick in violence that has happened between these hours. Before I move to support either option, I did have some questions about some of the amendments that have been made. Just wanted to better understand if we've explored the anticipated costs this will impose on our businesses.
Yeah, so many of the measures will not have a cost associated. They're planning. They may be staff time recommendations. Now, obviously, when we talk about individualized businesses, it will depend in part what their current situation is. So, for example, the bill contemplates things like lighting. And so depending on the lighting conditions around the establishment, what they have in place will affect how much they might need to invest to become a well-lit establishment. Okay. You know, we're going to, as we develop the regulations, we'll have a better sense of that. But I think, you know, part of the amendments that the Public Safety Committee made was to add a grant program to help subsidize some of the costs for the business owners, because we largely agree that this is a community. We need the participation of the businesses, but not necessarily. We're not interested in doing harm to the businesses in such a way that they can't make ends meet to operate.
Okay. I also noticed that there was a discussion about the bill's implementation and who would lead this effort. What does the implementation involve besides requesting a plan? How are you, I guess, evaluating that plan, or what does this involve?
Yeah, so the regulations that we develop afterwards that the council will see, and frankly, we want the council to be participants in development of those regulations, will both provide direction on certain things that the plan must require, but also provide other additional recommendations. And the regulations would then be taken by a business and used to develop a plan. That plan would be reviewed by the entities identified in the bill that the council has broadened to make sure that it's consistent with the intent of both the law and the regulations.
Okay. Does it specify in the bill who will lead the implementation? I know that was recommended. And is there a reason why there was such specificity on its implementation?
There was a robust discussion during the Public Safety Committee regarding implementation of the bill. And the decision made by the committee was, if this was a 2-to-1 decision, was to retain, as originally drafted, the police department as the lead agency that would be responsible for issuing the regulations, responsible for approving or disapproving late night business plans. There was discussion of a potential amendment that Councilmember Mink had put forward during the Public Safety Committee to involve regional service directors as the individuals or officials who would be approving or disapproving the plans. And the Public Safety Committee did not choose to go that path, but did include regional service centers along with other relevant agencies, including DPS, the health department. They define them as relevant agencies that would contribute to consulting about what should be in the regulations, to providing needed training for late night businesses, and as Dr. Stoddard said, to help in the review of plans and the contribution to what should be in the plans.
And Christine, could you also make mention of the other amendment in that regard?
Okay. Okay, so we'll get more information about that process once this bill is voted on? of who's implementing, or is it already
No,
set?
it would be, as recommended by the Public Safety Committee, it would be, the police department would be the primary agency responsible. And I should also mention, there was additionally discussion of a proposal by council members Stewart and Jawando to place the county executive the office of the county executive itself at the helm of implementation instead of the police department. But it also allowed for the office of the county executive to designate a department or office within the county government that would be the lead. So that would still leave open the possibility it could be the police department, it could be the county executive, it could be a different entity.
Okay, that's helpful to know. I'm also concerned about expediting this bill. We have to give businesses time to develop these plans, and also for us to create the implementation process and organize the entities who are going to be responding, whether it's giving out warnings, what that process will even look like. And so can we make sure that this is implemented under the normal time frame to give everyone the appropriate time?
So the Public Safety Committee did recommend expediting the bill in recognition of its urgency and also to get it on the books as soon as possible. However, at the same time, they did anticipate what the council member is saying about a transition period. There is, if you, I'm at Circle 8 of the packet, and if you, this is the committee's version of the bill, and if you, starting at line 163 of the bill, there's an implementation section that would require the implementing department to provide the regulations to the council within 180 days after the act becomes law, and then it wouldn't be until 90 days after the regulations take effect until any business would be required to submit a plan. So that would provide an on-ramp for them so that it wouldn't be as if on day one you're expected to have a plan approved that, you know, and you're not aware of the parameters.
So how are we going to be sharing this new law with them? Are we providing a template for what this plan should look like? What guidance are we providing to the businesses?
Yes, great point. And the part of the bill does require, part of the bill as amended would require a template plan, and the lead agency, you know, currently the police department, in conjunction with the other relevant agencies, would be responsible for putting together that template to help guide the business in the creation of the plan.
All right, thank you so much. I will also join my colleague in supporting option number 2, and I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jawando.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. Good to see you, Lieutenant. I was going to call you Lieutenant. Excuse me, you're a captain now. So this bill is important for a lot of reasons. It addresses some concerns that our community has around public safety, and so it's important that we're talking about it. The couple things I want to raise. I want to thank the committee. I want to thank Councilmember Katz and Stewart and Councilmember Mink and Lukey, who are on the committee, for their diligent work. It's funny, I called you Lieutenant, but you were Lieutenant when a couple years ago we convened the businesses in downtown Silver Spring with the police department for, at that time, which was the first time, with many of the business owners there, a lot of them, and that has yielded good fruit, and I was happy to be able to do that and lead that with our office, and that has continued, and it's changed the environment. I know you've talked about this before, as Chief Jones and Commander McBain, and there's partnership with the businesses now. There's a big WhatsApp group with the downtown Silver Spring businesses that I still look at sometimes, where they're communicating and working together. And so that's been progress, but more progress needs to be made. I appreciate the committee for making this a county-wide bill and creating an appeals process, requiring public safety training And those are all positive amendments. There's a few others I want to talk about, including the one that we're considering now. The bill should be 12 to 5. As it was originally introduced, it was 12 to 6. I proposed 12 to 5 and agree with the, we don't want to catch the diner crowd. That's not what the intent here. But I think 12 to 5 makes sense for a number of reasons. One, and probably chief among them, is equity. It can only be a countywide bill if it's 12 to 5 a.m. It's just a fact. And police department and I don't always agree, but I think we agree on this point. And I'll just let you state that on the record, Captain Reed. I think Chief Jones and you agree that it should be 12 to 5.
I do believe it should be 12 to 5, and I think, and I concur, and I tip my hat to the council for making this a countywide bill, because I think we have proved, and again, I will give you credit for setting that initial meeting, because I saw such a benefit, and to use that as a stepping stone to bridge the gap between the businesses and the police department, because we've always talked about staffing and numbers. It takes a partnership in order for us to work together to bring real change and safety to our community. So I think we have shown, working with places like Society and counties, that, and Dr. Stoddard was there from the initial onset of these business compliance checks. They listened to the handheld metal detectors. They listened to dressing their staff professionally and how to do secondary pat-downs and how to de-escalate situations, how to work with law enforcement, how to do adequate lighting. And we haven't had calls for service in their establishments in 10 months. And we talk about nighttime legislation. We talk about, keeping the community safe in the nighttime. Well, let's do it in the nighttime, not just in particular hours between 2 and 5. I believe it is equitable, and I believe it puts every business on a playing field. We want to work with you. This is not about shutting you down. This is not about us telling you how to run your business. This is us working in a partnership with you in order to make the community safe, in order to bring in your patrons where you're going to make that profit. So I believe this is a good plan.
I appreciate that, and agree with everything you said. You mentioned Society, whose owner was at the press conference when the county executive announced this bill, who, ironically enough, would not be covered by the bill if the Second Amendment would be going forward, unless there were the 2 serious incidents. And I know I have issues with that as well, which we'll get to, about how that's defined and how that would work. I think it's very unworkable. If you look, and I've done this, I've driven around the county from 2 to 5 in all of our downtown areas that have nightlife. The only businesses that will be covered by that are immigrant and black and brown owned businesses primarily. And many that don't have a liquor license because you can't, but that they're either food or hookah or other types of establishments that have cultural meaning and significance to the black and indigenous populations. And this bill would be specifically targeting them. Maybe not intentionally, but in practice, is what it would be doing. And it would be saying the violence problem is something that is your problem. And it's not. We know that. There's crime up in all times of the day, and we have a response to that. But this is to focus on late night. To Captain Reed's point, if we're going to focus on late night, let's focus on late night. Things happen at 12:30. They happen at 1 a.m. One of the main business proponents of this bill, who has done great work at Society, they should have a plan, and they will have a plan, and it should be part of it. It could be used to coordinate with others. And we shouldn't be targeting specific businesses as this does. The racial equity statement, while indeterminate, does point out that it could have a negative impact, particularly if it targets specific communities or types of businesses, which is what this Second Amendment would do. So I strongly believe that this needs to be 12 to 5, for reasons I've stated and the reasons that the police department has stated. There's only about 20 to 30 businesses in the county that would be covered, and they are not responsible for the late night crime and violence in a proportionate way. So I just think that this is good practice, and if we're going to have people do it, if we want it to be countywide, which was the committee's determination, it should be 12 to 5. I have comments on other parts of the bill, but I'll pause since this is what we're on. So I would again strongly urge colleagues that we look at the 12 to 5 time frame. Serious provisions, that's serious incidents. that's an administrative nightmare. I don't know who's deciding that, how's it defined. It's not something that we should be looking into. Thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, and thank you, Councilmember Jawando, for your work on this, and Captain Reed as well, and thank you, Dr. Stoddard, for being here. I very much appreciate the comments of my colleague, Councilmember Jawando, in pointing out his reasons for supporting option 1. I'm going to support option 2 after speaking with a number of businesses and also thinking about how we are going to implement this and do this well. If we were to extend this to all businesses 12 to 5, my concern in the short term would be the number of businesses and making sure that we're doing this well. I think focusing on the 20 or 30 businesses that are open from 2 to 5, making sure that we're getting this right, that it is a true partnership between our county government and our local businesses is very important. In addition, the provision option 2 does talk about how businesses open from 12 to 2 can voluntarily opt into this. So I think that is important as well, because we want this to be a partnership and not something that people are feeling is overly burdensome, because we want, as we have seen, as Captain Reed, as you've talked about, it has been good for the community. It has been good for these businesses that have already started to work with you to put in place many of these things. And so for those reasons, and the fact that the, working with the Greater Silver Spring Chamber, the Restaurant Association, all of them who've had concerns about how this would be implemented, and working with some of the local businesses, I'm going to support option 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Albornoz.
Well, it's good to be back. Hello, everybody. And I did test negative for the 3rd time today, so, but wearing a mask just to be safe, and thank you, colleagues. And I don't think the statute of limitations has expired on Happy Mother's Day, so it's the first time we've been together. So, couple of things. When I was in high school, my mom told me nothing good happens after midnight. I totally disagreed with her. And then now I have 2 teenagers, and I know exactly what she was talking about. But be that as it may, this is actually the 13-year anniversary of the Nighttime Economy Task Force that Councilmembers Jawando, Glass, and I participated in over a decade ago, because it's important for a community to have different arts and entertainment and just entertainment options. And often those late night options are beneficial to an entire society and a community, to allow people to let loose in a way that's productive and healthy and helpful, and that also contributes to our overall economy. Those are all really great things. But I think the rash of incidences that we saw starting 2 summers ago really shook all of us. And it happened to correspond to the same time that all of my colleagues on this dais and I were knocking on doors, and there was no ambiguity when you were knocking on doors in and around downtown Silver Spring and other urban district areas around the county. There was deep concern raised, and there continues to be, about what happens in those bewitching hours after midnight across the entire community, but in particular in those more urban districts. And so, candidly, I, along with 2 of my colleagues from the previous council, actively pursued legislation that would have closed down businesses after 2 a.m. period, because of the rash of concerns that we were seeing from residents and so many different people. But after a conversation with Councilmember Jawando, which was very productive and helpful, and the thoughtful meeting that he referenced, which by all accounts was very successful and continues to be a good community building model moving forward, I backed off. And as soon as Councilmember Stewart came on board, further proving that she's all in, doing reconnaissance work with her staff at 2 a.m. Just a couple weeks ago is really extraordinary. I think this is a very reasonable approach, and I do credit the county executive and his team, who worked diligently with MCPD and the community to engage stakeholders. And not surprisingly, people had different opinions, and we're coming at this from different angles. And so I think option 2 is reasonable. and is nuanced given what is happening on the ground now. And I think takes us another step closer to balancing the need for us to have opportunities for people to be able to let their hair down, but also do it in a manner that's safe and acknowledges the reality that we have right now, which is that we are severely down in the amount of officers who are in a position to be able to cover, especially these sometimes most challenging hours of day to cover. And so I think this is reasonable. I also think it's timely. We're about to enter into another summer season, which is when crime tends to rise generally anyways. And so I think it's important for us to enact this now, give businesses an opportunity to adjust. And as is always the case, if it doesn't work or things need to be tweaked or adjusted, they will be evaluated and they can be tweaked and adjusted. So it looks like Dr. Stark
Yeah,
wants
so I wanted to address a couple things. So very much appreciate your comments on that. And then I think you've nailed it correctly. So in the original iteration of the bill, we identified priority areas largely because we felt like we didn't want to include we didn't want to catch every business open between midnight and 6 a.m. I think in the original draft up into legislation, figuring priority areas would help address that. With the removal of priority areas, I think I would recommend, and certainly I have spoken to the county executive, he recommends that we narrow it in some way beyond all businesses between midnight and 5 a.m. While I think we all agree that having businesses do plans is a good thing, and if they did it, voluntarily on their own or opted in, that would be great. But obviously, with this being the first iteration of an effort like this, I think my preference is, the county executive's preference is that we start smaller and build out as deemed necessary by what happens on the ground. As you alluded to, Councilmember Auburn knows our summers tend to be our most active times in the late time, and that means both in terms of late night playing, but also in terms of late night issues. And so we will be very introspective. I think a big part of this bill is a reporting requirement about what we do see. And I think that data collection process will inform how this body could move forward in the future, expanding beyond the hours as deemed. Now, obviously, there are certain businesses that have, I'll be candid, there are certain bad actors in this space. Not many, and they're not all businesses are bad. Most businesses are really good partners, good community members. They're doing the right thing. Not all business owners, and certainly some are more willing to ignore good practice than others. And I think this bill should be narrowly focused on those businesses that have been the source repetitively of problems, and who, where there just happens to be more issues concentrated in fewer areas, and time frames as we've seen fit. This will not address countywide crime in any sense of the word. I think we all agree on that. This is meant to narrowly address a specific issue and allow us to focus more. Very few people are enjoying late night activities after 2 a.m. But there are a disproportionate number of issues associated with those fewer people during those time frames. Based on the data we can see there's very concentrated areas where we see issues late at night that happen to correspond to these businesses. We have heat maps that show that. So I think we're trying to address a very small problem in a less onerous way than simply closing the businesses, as you alluded to. And so I think that's certainly where the county executive is.
Thank you. That's helpful. Captain?
Sir, so I just want to kind of reiterate from the community standpoint, when we go to these community meetings, the 2 to 5 a.m. is their biggest problem and concern. So, and the police side of it, when I look at these reports, when we have the problems in like some of the hookah bars or something like that, we usually backtrack, and we found out that the problem started in a bar that closes at 2 o'clock, and then they follow each other over somewhere else, and the problem escalates. And that's why we wanted the 12 to 5, because that allows us and our detectives, if it goes into a violent act, then we can backtrack and find out what was the main cause, what caused this. Now, I can tell you that, and I kind of agreed that it would broaden the businesses if we go to 12. But I do believe, and I do a lot of site security surveys, the new Citizens Lounge that's about to open. I would go in, I would talk to them about their security, their cameras, their lighting. A lot of people, a lot of businesses are on board because they understand if certain things happen in their business, it's not John Doe that's reported, it's the business itself that is the problem. And so I want to help alleviate that. So it's not fair to them. It's not fair to that business to be ridiculed for the actions of one person. So a lot of people are getting on board. But what I would say as we go into this, and if we do start from 2 to 5, the council to be open if we do have that one problem establishment that we deem it's, like you said, is the one bad actor that shuts down at 2 o'clock, repetitive fights, repetitive actions, they don't want to put up any security cameras, then I think that gives us an opportunity to come back to the drawing board and say, okay, now we need to start adding businesses that are not wanting to play by the rules, that are putting their community in danger.
I appreciate that. And we do have other tools at our disposal for those that have liquor licenses, for example, which are regulated by the county. So there is another lever that we have to pull. But in sort of as we phase, hopefully this is it. But if this doesn't do what it is intended to, we'll obviously have to reevaluate. But I think this is a reasonable next step. So with that, I yield back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Vice President Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really appreciate all of the work. I have participated in some of the meetings, certainly not all of the meetings. Really appreciate all the work that has occurred. I do remember the very large meeting in downtown Silver Spring that I don't want to say kicked off some of the more in-depth meetings, but certainly was a galvanizing force to that. So this has been a long time coming. There have been a lot of dynamics here. I say that to note the fact that I am concerned about this being expanded. And I think that this effort has been going on for many, many months, and there has been significant amounts of engagement with local businesses, working together with the police department, with the executive branch, and I appreciate Dr. Stoddard and the Regional Service Center, and I appreciate Councilmember Stewart as the new district council member, really diving into a train that had already left the station while it was moving, and fully dedicating to that, including very late night efforts, which I very much appreciate, and all the work that Councilmember Jawando and others have undertaken. But I am very concerned about us, after months and months and months of engagement, specifically working together with local businesses, expanding it into parts of the county with businesses that haven't been engaged at all, that haven't been part of this conversation, and aren't aware of this, that haven't been privy to the productive and constructive conversations that have occurred, and I think would be surprised when this happens. And so I just want to note that I appreciated this, even though I did have some concerns about whether or not we were asking businesses to play the role of law enforcement and public safety, and working through that issue. And I think there has been a lot of effort to work through collaboratively between the police department and the businesses to make sure that that isn't how it is perceived. But that is in a very specific and targeted place in the county where this was originally focused. So I will personally, I'll support option 2 because I think that it is the better of the two options. But frankly, I'm not really supportive of either. And I don't think I'll be supporting the bill, if it is expanded to a point where it's engaging businesses that have not been part of this process that has gone on for quite a long time, because that does give me significant concerns. But I do appreciate all the work that has taken place. I recognize that we have real challenges and real issues that we need to address and that we need to deal with, and that this bill, as it was introduced and as it has gone through the legislative process, is attempting to address one piece of many other issues, as Dr. Stoddard, you noted, and Captain Reed, you mentioned. This is not going to solve everything. We have many public safety issues, and we need to provide as much support and tools as we can. I just think that we're asking for folks to be impacted who haven't been engaged if we expand this more broadly, and I have some real concerns about that. With that, I'll yield back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. First off, before I forget, I wanted to publicly thank, and I thanked Chief Jones before, but Captain Reed and Commander McBain have also been directly involved with us. And Captain Reed has the ability to be extremely influential in when he discusses things with us. And he did do some turnarounds when I told him that he really is into sales. But I believe option 2 still is the best. And I think that we have, and Council President, you said no proposal is perfect. Sally will tell you that that's certainly true, that my proposal, but yeah, it is not perfect. She'll agree with that. But I also believe that this is a very good place to begin, and hopefully the changes, with these changes, it changes things that are real, and it changes things that are perceptions, and we have both here. We have both. And I think that I sincerely appreciate Councilmember Juanda's concern. I think it's certainly something that we have to keep in mind. Hopefully, we will not have that change that Captain Reed talked about, that we would have to come back and have those discussions. But I believe option 2 gives us that ability. I think if we don't go county-wide, then at that point, if we have a problem outside of quote-unquote the priority areas, then we have to come back and write legislation again. And we need the flexibility that all of our departments, talking to our businesses, saying we want you to be successful, we want to help you be successful, but you've got to change what you're doing to be successful for you and your neighbors and your patrons. I think that makes a lot of sense. So the Restaurant Association, as Councilmember Stewart has mentioned, is supportive of option 2, Silver Spring Chamber. We can go down the list. And I think what Dr. Stoddard said is so very right. The vast majority of businesses want to do the right thing. They want to do the right thing for their patrons. They want to do the right thing for themselves. They want to do the right thing for the neighborhood. They want to do the right thing. And if there's a problem, and hopefully there's not, they want to do the right thing to correct that for themselves and the neighborhoods and everybody else. And I believe that if we start with the 2 o'clock, and if there's a problem that's not working, then we need to come back and figure out how fast we can change this. This is something that needs to be done. And for the expediting part, this means that the bill, when it passes, if it passes, that it would start immediately. Otherwise, it has to wait. Christine, is it 90 days? And we would be way past the summer. We wouldn't even be able to communicate with their businesses and say, look what we're going to do in 180 days, 90 days, whatever it is. And we need to start that right now. And there's nothing that's saying that a business right this second wouldn't have a plan. But if we do it right away, they'll know exactly what we would like them to do and what we think is the right thing to do. So I'm supportive of option 2. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Fani Gonzalez.
Yes, thank you for all the work that has taken place to get us to this place. I would say that when I first heard of this initiative, I was happy. And I decided to talk to different businesses in Wheaton and in Glenmont. I am a district council member, so I'm focused on my district. I went to talk to pretty much 90% of, maybe 80% of all of them were immigrant-owned businesses, businesses that open after, midnight. And I wanted to get their feedback, how they felt about this and how this type of policy will affect them. And let me tell you, my friend, the response was actually positive. Every single business that I talked to, think of La Rumba, think of Unplugged, think of So many, I can't keep up. They already have safety plans in place. All of them are already paying for private security already. All of them are telling me we actually want to have a better relation with the police. So once I heard that, guess what I did? I contacted my friend Captain Smith. He's a captain for District 4, the Police District 4. And I started having meetings with him and the business owners to, number one, get to know each other. Number two, have the police also get to know the private company that each of these businesses hired. They're all very different. I wish it was one company for everybody, but that's not the case. And give them their advice as a police officer, how they can communicate and work better. I do believe, and again, many of the businesses that I talk to are very different. Like I'm thinking the Irish Pub, the Limerick. That's the one I always go to. And, you know, they'll be happy with option 2 because the second part operate anytime between the hours of 12 and 2. These guys don't barely have any issues. They won't fall into this, if you have been subject of 2 or more service calls, you know, they're not going to be affected. I mean, so far, who knows in the future. And the whole thing about the cameras, the business that I talked to, they were like, you know, if you have issues, you can come and get our footage. We want to help you. We don't want to have criminals in our businesses because it affects the business. Okay? So all that to tell you that I am for option 2. And I think Councilmember Katz mentioned this, you know, these things can be amended in the future. We can try it out. If it doesn't work, you know, consider this a pilot. And I do believe that it should be expedited right away, as he mentioned. The whole point is to have, you know, the summertime is when more things happen. If we wait 90 days, we're going to lose the important segment of the year when we should have had this implemented. So option 2 is for me, and then the whole thing about having this countywide or in specific areas, I do think it should be in specific areas, but I'm gonna go with the flow. At the end of the day, it doesn't affect me as a district council member because it will be my district no matter what. And I thank the county executive for moving this forward and for the police for being a partner on this. That's it.
Someone wants to make a motion later on to move it from countywide to specific areas, we can do that. Councilmember Lutke.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, everyone involved with this process, because I know it's been incredibly tedious. But I've heard several comments here today regarding the timing that I just want to level set expectations, because the way this is written, even if it is passed today as emergency legislation, there are 180 days to develop the regulations, and then compliance becomes effective 90 days after that. So it is 9 months from now. So it is not something, or potentially 9 months, because you know we could all agree to speed up, right? But it's not going to be done in June is the point. And so, you know, I think it's important that everyone understand that, because everybody's 100% correct. Summer always brings an increase in criminal issues. So that's one. In terms of it being countywide versus location specific, and I argued this at committee, the reason why I argued for it to be countywide, one, an equity issue, two, so that we're not playing catch up. Unfortunately, sometimes when legislation gets passed with great intention to deal with an immediate problem, you aren't aware of the problem that's already brewing somewhere else. And because the legislative process isn't always speedy, it seemed better to make it countywide to start. And again, that would largely, because there aren't many places operating between 2 and 5 countywide in other parts of the county or outside of these priority districts, but it would only apply to them in a mandatory capacity if they'd had 2 serious offenses in the past 12 months. Otherwise, there's voluntary participation, and as noted, there's language in here related to grant funding for that. There's another part. Oh, yes, I was supposed to explain serious offenses and talk to that. The way this is written, it allows the definition of serious offenses to be designated in the regulations. And one of the reasons why that's there is it can be done with reference to specific portions of the criminal law article for Maryland. And for example, if anyone wanted to take a look, in the education article at 7303, the reportable offenses statute that applies to K-12 students, but does have a kind of the statutory language I would expect to see referenced in a regulation related to this, where you're focusing on things like serious sexual assaults, first and second degree offenses, weapons related charges, and those kinds of things. But that would be up to the multi-body group that is put together, as noted by Ms. Wellens. It's not, while MCPD may be designated as the lead entity on this, there are other agencies that are going to be collaborating with this that can help flesh out which of our criminal law provisions would be appropriate to be included in that definition of serious offenses. Why MCPD? Yes, because of your knowledge, experience, expertise in risk management and in understanding these areas and what types of things have been happening in and around the community. And also with respect to the other entities that we have pulled into the fold in the proposed amendments that you have here that passed out of committee. MCPD is the entity that has experience in crime prevention through environmental design. That's your wheelhouse. That's not something that's in the wheelhouse of the other entities. So again, it's meant to be collaborative and incorporate all the sort of different entities that that would have information that would help bear on what should be included in these plans. And correct me if I'm wrong, Captain Reed, but as I said at committee, these are not War and Peace length plans. This is a template that will be provided to make sure everyone is covering the appropriate things that need to be assessed for a facility, and that this applies to, and also to clarify that the serious offenses language, that you made it clear that that was not just for things that happened inside a facility, but would apply where something started brewing in the facility and went outside.
That's correct.
Okay.
Again, as the lead law enforcement agency, we understand the partnership, working with ABS, ATC, DHSS for loud noises. We've been doing this for months, over a year, working with our business compliance checks. We've been on the ground, but we also know the background, the calls for service, the violence that we see, and we bring those entities. And we also sprinkle in a little community engagement. We want to see them succeed. Mm-hmm. But in order for them to succeed, they had to listen to us. And I think everything we have done in downtown Silver Spring, all the violence that was noted 2 years ago, we don't have that right now. I mean, there is always going to be crime, but their officers are making on-scene arrests as they happen, and a lot of times that is in partnership with the business owners that have listened to us, that their security staff work with law enforcement, hire additional part-time police officers, have cameras that we can go back and look at. All of those are selling points to these other businesses. This is what we can attain. And you throw on a placard that says, I am working with law enforcement to make you safe in my establishment, please come. And that's what we want to help with.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, President Glass. Just had a quick question. If the bill was expanded to midnight, how many additional businesses would be included that are operating between 12 and 5?
We attempted to assess this, but not knowing exactly the hours of certain alcohol establishments, it was not possible to get a firm number. But it would be several orders of magnitude more businesses. So whereas it's probably 20 to 30, I think that's been alluded to already, it would probably be well over 100. That have some number of hours between midnight and 12 or 2 a.m. Many businesses aren't uniform hours at all times of the year and all days of the week. And so it'd be very different. We have to go back and look at each individual business of which, apply, but it would be 2, 3, 4, 5 times as many businesses.
Thank you.
That is also what I located to and through our investigation is sometimes the hours change on businesses. Sometimes they're open Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sometimes they open Saturday, Sunday. Sometimes they open from 12 to 3. Sometimes they open from 3 to 7. I mean, it's like, it's very hard in our business compliance checks where we would plan on, okay, we're going to go down this street planning on these businesses being open, where they're closed now. And so that's where it was a little bit frustrating for us, as through our research, the hours were just all over the place. And it was almost like pop-up events where they would send out, you know, through social media, hey, we're going to be open now. And then everybody would come in. Our officers are completely understaffed because they don't know. I mean, I have videos and footage that I have shown Chief Jones where all of a sudden a pop-up event happens. There's 300 people that just showed up, and I've got 5 cops working. And so this was where this legislation is really going to help us, because it makes these business owners, especially the ones that haven't really worked with us in the past, say, hey, just to let you know, we have this large event, and it gives me a week to plan, bring in additional resources, so this doesn't scatter into the neighborhood. People get hurt, people run out in the middle of the street, get hit by a car. It just allows us to plan and work with the business owners.
I think it would be helpful, since we've all agreed that this is somewhat of a pilot, that we review this in a year and see if we need to expand the locations to include businesses operating between 12 and 2 a.m., just to ensure that our officers are not overwhelmed with this pilot and with the response that's needed to get this off the ground. We have 9 months before, you know, full implementation. And so I think it would be helpful to start off slow, and then if we need to ramp up after a year of evaluating what the success rate is, what crime looks like, then we can think about expanding. But want to make sure you have enough support to get started in this.
Yes, ma'am. And also, just to let the council know, sometimes you'll talk to a business, they'll say, we stopped serving at 2 o'clock. Yeah, but they don't really close until 3. So that's other things we have to keep in mind too. If you want to do between 2 and 5, and say, what time do you stop serving alcohol? Yeah, we're done at 2 o'clock. Well, that doesn't mean they close at 2 o'clock. They're still open until 3, and then everybody leaves. So these are things you got to keep in mind too.
Okay.
We will obviously have a summer this summer during which we can collect some data and information and be willing to, we're absolutely willing to have some reporting back to the council in the fall about what we saw this summer, and then we can have a further discussion.
The bill also, to Councilmember Sales' question, does include an annual reporting requirement.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I'm just going to jump in real quick. Captain Reed, I appreciate what you just shared. And I think there's a lot to unpack in that. One, if there's pop-up nature events, it's hard to pinpoint it at any time. So trying to even define a time between 12 and 5 would be hard under those parameters. And so there is a whack-a-mole approach that we all acknowledge. And the committee made the determination that going countywide is the best way to try to mitigate that, rather than have a tightly defined area where we know the problems currently are occurring. With respect to the scenarios of after parties, I think, as Councilmember Albornoz said, as others have said, we have liquor laws. And the liquor laws clearly state that no sales are to occur after 2 a.m. And if there is a business that is selling alcohol after 2 a.m., that is the remedy. The revocation of the liquor license, the whatever next steps need to occur to encourage them to be better neighbors. And trying to find another remedy when one is already there, not in local law, but in state law, because liquor licenses are provided by the state. I think that's what we need to look at. And under those other scenarios where people might be lingering after 3, if it's after 2, if it's after 2, it's after 2. And that's what option 2 provides for. I think there are remedies before us that already exist. And what we're trying to do through this process is make the areas, the businesses, and the patrons have a safer environment for those that are not currently operating within statute. With that, Councilmember Jawanda.
Thank you. I just want to just encourage us to step back and reframe this. You know, to Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez brought up an important point. When I thought you were coming my way when you started to say what you were saying. when you said that, like, the businesses have the plans, wanting to do them, and some of those are businesses that aren't open after 2 that you mentioned. This is a good thing. Like, we want these plans to be developed, and you know, I think we need to think about the points that have been made by, we tried really hard working with the administration to find out what are the businesses open between 12 and 5 and what are the businesses open between 2 and 5. We weren't able to nail that down specifically. So that obviously there needs to be some work done on that. And it's always everything's a moving target. Anything we do is exact. Our vacancy rate isn't exact at any one moment in time either. So, but we could have a pretty good sense. But one thing I do know is that there are not many businesses open between 2 and 5. And I know that the vast majority, if not, you know, I'm not going to say all because you never know all, but the vast majority of them are immigrant-owned, black and brown-owned businesses who are not the driver of our state crime and safety problems. And so what we're saying here is we're going to pilot something on the backs of those businesses, which are not the main driver, in the hopes that it will produce something. I think we're looking at it the wrong way. It's good to have these safety plans. Let's just encourage everyone to have a safety plan and work with them over a period of time to do so. If you're open after 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. rather. I just cannot emphasize enough that this is, 1, not going to solve the problem, and 2, not effective, and 3, it's not equitable. It's discriminatory, in fact. And so it's on all measures, it just doesn't work. Captain Reed talked about the let out. You know, we all know when I grew up, we called it the let out. When you come out of a place and you have to have your head on a swivel because you're worried about something that could happen, because there's people who are intoxicated, or a very small minority of people who want to cause trouble or get into a fight or carry on a disagreement that happened inside the bar. God bless you. Many of these, as you mentioned, issues are a result of that. The shooting we had at Pike and Rose a few weeks ago, 11:50 police dispatched, 11:50 p.m. So if we're going to solve the problem, let's solve the problem. Let's not target 30 businesses that are immigrant-owned businesses and say we've solved the problem. We're not doing it. And you know, I won't ultimately be able to support it if we go in that direction. But let's not confuse it. I want the public to be very clear that these businesses are not the main. They don't serve alcohol. The businesses that will be covered under this plan, absent the serious incidents, which I think is still a little murky, are businesses that don't serve alcohol, are not allowed to serve alcohol, and that are primarily immigrant, black and brown owned, and are not the main driver of our violence problems. So that's what this bill would reduce this scope to, and I just think that's wrong and it's not effective. Thank you.
Councilmember Mink.
I appreciate the conversation and everybody's work on this. I know it's been a lot of going back and forth, but I know that everybody is dedicated to coming to the best solution that we possibly can, and I appreciate all of the hands and the input that have been in that. You know, it was a long conversation at the committee also, and you can see, I'm sure, why we ended up bringing some decision points back to the full council here. There's not an obvious solution, and we're dealing with a difficult issue. And take note of this because maybe you don't hear it that often. As with Vice President Friedson, I agree that neither option 1 nor option 2 is perfect here. And I think, again, that's why this ended up back at the council. We were really debating between, you know, trying to find the right balance to include the right number of businesses. We're balancing that with the capacity of the executive branch to handle that. We're balancing that with a burden on businesses and trying to figure out what are the measures that we can implement to limit the number of businesses. And, as you can see, the committee was not comfortable limiting by geography. So that was one potential measure that was out. So then we're looking at limiting by time. And as you've heard from Councilmember Jawando, as you've heard from Captain Reed, that's problematic for various reasons as well. We are potentially missing some businesses that should be included if we limit the time frame. I agree that the serious incidents is going to be a headache to try to figure out exactly what that means, because now we're looking at, although you can list particular crimes that it falls under, we're talking about crimes that have not been tried in a court of law. So there's going to be debate there. There's going to be argument. Did something start inside a business, or did it start outside? There's just haggling that could happen over these things. There's going to be people who get upset, whether it's the business or the people. Are there implications there? If an officer makes an assessment that it happened here versus there, now does that have implications for the prosecution of that case and whether or not that person is going to be found guilty for some particular. So there's just a lot of complicated implications that start happening when you introduce the serious incidents clause. And so my leaning, while I feel like neither of these is perfect, my preference is for option 1 for those reasons. And the main concern that I'm hearing there is that from 12 to 2, if we introduce 12 to 2 blanket for everyone, that is a significant number of additional businesses. So my question then is, what exactly is the burden on the businesses and the burden on the executive branch? And we're talking specifically about the officers. And so my thinking there is, you're telling us that you can handle that, and additionally that in conversation with the committee about what is the burden on these businesses, that the hope is to give them a form that's easy to fill out, to make this as easy as possible and implementation as easy as possible. And if they're not a business that is that is particularly problematic in this way, then their safety plan doesn't need to be particularly complex. It can just be notifying, being clear about what their hours are, or whatever the case may be. But for if many of those businesses are not facing a problem, then for this to really just be a very simple turning in of a form. And so for that reason, I think that option 1 is the preferable option between the two.
Thank you. Final word, Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. And thank you all. I know that many people have been working on this for a long time, and I appreciate that. And I was first made aware of it back before I was here working with a fellow Chamber of Commerce. So clearly the regulation is the key to this, and I think it's really important as the regulation is developed that it ties up a lot of the loose ends that you're hearing today, and particularly the definition of serious incidents. What is that? Appreciate Councilmember Mink's point about when does one serious incident begin and where does it begin, because I'm sure you would agree that it tends to move geographically where a serious incident takes place. I do support the businesses that are open from 2 to 5. I support option 2, partly because of the scope, but also because of the existing alcohol laws. If we want to focus on establishments with beer, wine, alcohol licenses that are open until 2, we should do that through the existing alcohol, the ABS laws. But I'm okay with focusing on the open 2 to 5, and part of that is because of the scope. Given the limited resources, I think that that is a reasonable way to do it. And I'm also okay with countywide. I don't know if there are any establishments in my district that are open from 2 to 5. If there are, my office is very happy to work with them to make sure that they have a plan in place and move forward. I agree that it's not going to solve all the issues of the bad things that happen after midnight, but I think it's one important tool in the toolbox. My final point is notification to businesses.
This is an ongoing issue that when the county passes laws that businesses are required to comply with, the county needs to make sure not only that they notify the businesses, but also to help with compliance. So I appreciate that. And that, I yield. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Ms. Wellens.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to note regarding the precise language of option 2, wanted to make sure that everyone is on the same page, since it seems as though folks are, leaning towards that option. On page 5 of the staff memorandum, you can see the amendment that was before the Public Safety Committee, and in terms of where the serious incidents occurred, as presented to the Public Safety Committee, it was incidents occurring on the premises of the business. However, my understanding, and they will correct me if I'm wrong, but that Chair Katz and Councilmember Lukey's preference was for staff to then work with Dr. Stoddard to incorporate language saying that if the incident originates on the premises, that too would fall under this ambit. So you'll see then on page 6 of the staff memorandum where Dr. Stoddard raised the possibility of including the language that the serious incident would occur on the premises or originate from the premises. So I believe that's what the option 2 that the council is deciding. So just wanted to make that clear. And I will add, just, for what it's worth, I do think it's a very valid, as multiple council members have stated, the regulations are very important because this could be a very messy factual inquiry of where did an incident occur. So I do anticipate that administratively that does make it more complicated.
Thank you for that. Councilman Mink has a very quick question.
Thank you. I just wanted to check. I know that there was an amendment later that allows for an appeal if the late night, and so for this part, is there appeal, or would folks consider allowing businesses to appeal if they are designated a late night business through this option?
So that's a secondary issue. Let's just right now vote on option 1 and option 2.
Well, this is a question about option 2. This would be a piece of option 2.
If option 2 is adopted, then you can bring that up to amend the law, amend the legislation that's before us procedurally. So I'm going to ask you to hold on to that.
Okay.
So 2 options are before us, option 1 and option 2, that are in our packet and that were just articulated by Ms. Wellens. All those in support of option 1, raise your hand. That is 2. All those in support of option 2, and that is 9. Option 2 is adopted. Councilman Mink, I'll turn it back over to you if you have a thought or suggestion.
Yes. As a potential way to help alleviate some of the concerns as expressed around option 2, which I know that we talked about, that neither are perfect, but I understand that the council's moving with option 2. That's fine. But a suggestion there to consider allowing businesses to appeal in the same way that they are the bill has been amended to allow them to appeal if their late night safety plan itself is rejected. Could they be allowed to appeal if they are deemed a late night business due to the serious incidents piece of this? And so I turn that over to council members, colleagues.
Can I ask what the motion is? What are you proposing?
Okay.
You asked a question, so if you want to make a proposal.
Sure. I'll make a motion to amend option 2 to add the ability for businesses that are deemed late night businesses under the serious incident clause to allow them to appeal that designation.
Is there a second? Seconded, moved by Councilmember Mink, seconded by Councilmember Jawando. Councilmember Lutke.
Thank you, Mr. President. Based on the fact that this would relate to an appeal, and based on the fact that there is a subsequent section of the packet that deals specifically with appeals with a recommended amendment, I would ask that we table Councilmember Mink's motion at this time so that we can deal with all things appeal related at the same time, because I believe the motion made would require changing language to on your packet, page 9, subsection F, appeals.
So let me ask Ms. Wellens, I see that the issue that we just took up between option 1 and 2 were the only discussion points that you highlighted. Are there any others that you would like to highlight for full council decision?
There was one other relatively minor issue I was going to bring up for the full council decision, and Councilmember Lukey is of course correct that the relevant language that we're discussing right at the moment is at the bottom of page 9 of the staff packet. So I believe that the amendment would, be fairly easy to draft, that it would be late night business may appeal the disapproval of a plan or the determination by the department that the business is a late night business. I could word that a little bit better.
Or the classification as a late night business.
Yeah.
So-
But I think the substance of the proposed amendment is clear, and if the council wants to go in that direction, I think we could certainly. It would be just amending the committee recommendation.
Understood. Let me ask Dr. Stoddard.
We would have no objections to that as an appeal process.
Well,
Yeah.
but let's talk through the process, right? Which we've all identified as really important. A business between 12 and 5 is going to be required to submit a safety plan, and one
Between
that's
2 and 5.
Thank you. 2 to 5 and 12 to 2, should there be 2 incidents that will be defined in regulation. When these are submitted, what does the executive branch intend to do? Is it the start of a conversation that is in essence a negotiation, or is it a pass-fail where then it gets sent back?
We would be collaborating with the business. That's the intent, is to encourage the participation in a process, as opposed to being like they'll have to provide a plan, but we'll work with them to produce a compliant plan. If we say, hey, you really need to do X, Y, and Z, and they say no, that's the only time in which they would go potentially have a rejected plan. If we said, hey, you know, this exit you have is routinely blocked, and they're like, well, we can't fix that because of X, Y, and Z, that would be a place where we'd have an impasse that would result in a failed plan. Yeah.
That is the answer I was hoping for.
Right.
This is a conversation, and it is a conversation about how businesses operating in these hours are good neighbors to the community and to their patrons. And if what they're proposing does not improve safety, then you would tell them that, and you would tell them where they need and how they need to improve the situation. And so I'm not sure that an actual appeal is necessary, because I would hope it wouldn't get to that point.
So the one situation where this, I think where Council Member Mink, and I apologize if I'm putting words in, but I think if, for example, there were a business there where, let's say, this has been public, so I don't think there's any. About a month ago, we had a serious incident that started in an establishment that resulted in a non-contact shooting. I believe it was in Councilmember Friedson's district. And the business that it originated in ceased the sale of alcohol for a week, basically recognizing that it was, there had been issues in their establishment. And so that would qualify as a serious incident that would initiate in that establishment. Supposing that there was another one later, so I think I see your look of confusion. There was a conflict that started inside their establishment that spilled out and resulted in a non-contact shooting outside of their establishment, based on some issues that started there. If there were another such incident in that same establishment in a year period, we would go to that business and say, hey, based on this clause within this bill, you're now subject to this regulation. That business may say, oh no, this second incident wasn't a serious incident, and here's why. That would be an appealable process for them at that point.
So thank you for that. I'm going to ask the sponsor to clarify, because I did not understand the motion to appeal whether they have to create a document. It was whether or not the document they created was good enough. Can you clarify the motion?
Yeah, so this was as Dr. Stoddard described. So this would be to appeal whether or not they should be designated as a late night business based on the 2 serious incidents.
In theory, it would be both, because it already allows them, if their plan is denied, to go to the Board of Appeals.
Understood. Thank you very much. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much. I think it's it's the right way to go about this. I think that if a business feels that they want to do the right thing, but they've been unjustly accused, they should be able to appeal it. This is a matter of us getting a business to feel comfortable to do the right thing, and I think an appeal is the right way to go.
Thank you. Councilmember Chawando.
Agreed. I seconded the motion. I'll support it. I think it's important to note here that the bill was amended to say that you can shut down the business if the plan is not approved. So this is not a paper tiger. As much of a conversation we all would hope that it is, the language says a person must not operate a late night business between the hours of midnight and 5 p.m. and this 2 to 5 now, without first submitting a proposed late night business safety plan. That it has to be approved. If it's disapproved, that the department provides written notice, in this case police department, that it's disapproved, and then you can't operate the business. You still own it, but you can't operate it, which means you can't, you're going to go out of business. So is that correct, Ms. Wellens, just so I'm clear?
Right, you wouldn't be able to, once you receive the written disapproval from the department, you would not be able to operate during those hours.
Right. So
And that
obviously,
would be appealable.
Yeah, and so there was discussion as we were developing this bill, but also in committee discussion about what we really want to do here, is which is why I think it was better to have it be more inclusive, is create a conversation between everyone who's involved in creating community safety. Obviously there's a role that the permitting plays, there's a role that the police play, there's a role that the business plays, and et cetera, and then you come to a good place with a good plan. But ultimately, under the bill, if the police, under the regulations that they put forward, are not happy with the plan, they can shut down the business. So in that case, you absolutely must have an appeal. You have to have an appeal, both to the approval or disapproval of the plan, but also to whether you're designated as an entity. So we have to support both, in my view. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lutke.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify, because I read it like 6 times, trying to make sure all the parts meet up with one another. And if, once all the different distinguishing choices are made today, as noted, the transition or the start for existing businesses has a pretty long runway under when this would happen. And really the portion that's under section 12 of the staff packet on page 13 about not operating a late night business if you don't have a late night business safety plan would be only for new businesses, right? So because they wouldn't be able to start operating until they had that. For our existing businesses, there's this time period, collaborative time period, in which the regulations are being drafted, in which everything is getting up and running for them to be able to submit and then get approval. So I just wanted to clarify that no one by operation of approving this bill today would be prevented from operating their business once it becomes effective.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor. All those in support of that motion? And that is unanimous. Thank you. Ms. Wellens, any other items that you think we need to be addressed?
The one relatively, in this grand scheme of things, relatively minor item is if you look at page 10 of the staff memorandum, where there is a requirement under the bill as originally drafted to, and would be retained by the Public Safety Committee's proposal, would be that if you are a business that is required to do video surveillance under an approved plan, then you need to post a notice. That's great. The question is, should the notice say that the business is subject to, quote, 24-hour video surveillance monitoring, or would it be better just to delete the term 24-hour? And Councilmember Lutke had identified this as an issue. I think it's a good clarification. Thank you.
Councilmember Lutke, you want to clarify?
Yes, I thought it was more important to just say that it's subject to video surveillance monitoring and does not specify a time period. And I realized I forgot to share this with Ms. Wellens before today's hearing, but as a separate issue, I would move to add a provision that makes it abundantly clear that these late night business safety plans are not subject to the Public Information Act. because there would be a compromise in the safety and security of operations of a business if these were able to be requested under the MPIA. It's really no different than there are other provisions in the MPIA that already exclude emergency plan and other types of safety and security documents from being able to be requested by the public. Thanks.
So I heard the second, but first, regarding the surveillance duration, does that require any action on our part, or is that just a clarification that you were just making?
That would require the council to adopt that change.
Move to delete 24-hour.
There you go. That's the motion I was expecting you to make. Okay. So moved by Councilmember Luedtke, seconded by Councilmember Fani Gonzalez. Any comments? All those in favor of that motion? Very good. And I think you have another motion.
My second motion is to add a provision that exempts these late night safety plans from the requirements of the MPIA.
And that was seconded by Councilmember Katz.
Mr. President, could I just clarify, and this is perhaps a question to Councilmember Luedtke, but whether the amendment would read that essentially that it's the council's intent that these are, deemed exempt as opposed to just absolutely that they are exempt?
Right. So you could cite to the cross provision in the general provisions article that relates to this class of documents, but as long as it just spells it out in here so that there's no misunderstanding, and so that our business community knows that their safety plans are protected.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Sales.
Yeah, I just had a question about the recent motion. Given that there is an appeals process, if business thinks that the appeal, thinks that the reason that they were cited was incorrect and they want to assess other, I guess, safety plans and evaluate their safety plan against another business that may have been approved. I'm just wondering if that sort of creates a barrier, and I know that there are concerns with the public being able to access how you're keeping your business safe, but then are we putting ourselves in a position to potentially disproportionately cite certain businesses for being in violation when plans could be maybe even similar to each other? And so I'm just wondering if there could be an opportunity for...
I think that's a really excellent point, and I'm trying to think it through in real time, which is always dangerous, but I do think that that could be highly relevant information for whether there was, for example, a discriminatory application. Yes. So I don't think this would foreclose, even if under the Public Information Act you were not able to access another business's plan as a general matter. I don't think that would foreclose that if you were in an appeal posture that you could demand the relevant information for your appeal, but I'm not sure if that would mean then that the Board of Appeals would need to potentially meet in a closed fashion in order to evaluate.
Disclose,
so I know I'm speaking in circles here, but I do think perhaps that could be addressed in regulations to say, look, the intent is not to prevent you from being able to tell, to gather the relevant information. And it could be that you're gathering the information, not I'm going to look at my competitor's business plan per se, but I am entitled to information from the police department about how many businesses and in what circumstances have been required to do X, Y, or Z.
Exactly.
And so proprietary information, could perhaps be redacted. So I think there are ways to handle it and to ensure that businesses can adequately defend themselves in an appeal or adequately represent themselves. But it might need to be through
Yeah.
regulation. I don't know if Dr. Stoddard has any
this
initial thoughts on this.
I think what you're suggesting is reasonable. I think we just have to figure out exactly how the mechanism, because I think it's totally reasonable that one business understand that they're not being held to a standard that other businesses are not being held to. But obviously, I think a redacted plan where it's de-identified from the individual business for whom it's being provided, I think is a reasonable way to keep it, to prevent that from happening. So we can certainly address that in regulations. I've made a note here. So
I think it could also be a component of the annual reporting of, like what types of businesses are being required to do what, under what circumstances, what are the
maybe
components of these plans?
resubmit a business plan that was rejected, how many were rejected. Okay, thank you.
Really good point. There is a motion on the floor, but I will circle back to say that the point you raised, it's a good one, and it's part of the reason why these plans need to be submitted to one central authorizing body, and decentralizing it to different regional service directors or some other type of group of individuals would further reinforce a different perceptions and different application. So having the county executive or whomever that designee might be, having one thought throughout the process, but there are certainly reporting mechanics to further get that information. Councilmember Lutke, regarding the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that, in my experience, and Dr. Stoddard and Captain Reed, you can speak to this, but typically entities that are required to do these types of plans often cross-collaborate when they're developing the plans and share and try to talk through and roundtable that together. So I would expect that would continue. And of course, any business could voluntarily share it with another business if they chose to, right, to be helpful. And again, typically this is a very collaborative type of process. But should there be litigation over some kind of discriminatory practice, those documents would be able to be produced in the litigation. There are additional protective measures that the courts can take or that the Board of Appeals can take in terms of shielding any sensitive information should that arise, but it would not, and does not now, even now, under other documents that are not to be disclosed under the Maryland Public Information Act, preclude those from being shared or disclosed in litigation. That still happens. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you. Good points, everyone. Recognizing that that's certainly an absolutely valid concern. I also have real hesitation about shutting down the ability to MPAA things, just in general, because the other businesses have an interest, the public has an interest, and so I just want to make sure that we address this concern, but also in a very thoughtful way. And I'm just saying that personally, I haven't gotten to think through all of the potential ramifications here. Ms. Wellens, is this an issue that as a whole could be addressed in its entirety in the Method 2 regulations as opposed to through an amendment to the bill right now?
I believe it could be, and I would just add to that we can't, that the wording would not preclude anyone from submitting an MPIA, and at the end of the day, we have to do whatever the MPIA says as opposed to our bill. So I would view this amendment as more as expressing the intent so that everybody's aware there's this expectation that these plans are generally exempt from disclosure under the MPIA because of their security and proprietary nature, but that would not, if then the police department in consultation with OCA says, oh no, under the MPIA we really do have to disclose this, they would still do that. This bill would not preclude them from doing it. But to your original question, yes, I think it probably could be addressed in regulations if needed.
Okay, if it could be addressed in regulations, then my preference, just be out of great respect for the respect that we all have for the public's right to seek knowledge about what's going on in government, but still retaining the ability for us to address this issue. My preference would be to leave this to Method 2 just to give us a little more time to really dive in and do a thorough job on this, and to request that the county executive make sure that that when the Method 2 comes back, that this is thoroughly addressed.
Councilmember Jawando.
Yeah, Ms. Wellens, you read my mind. I was just going to say we have to comply with the MPIA. I mean, obviously there could be ways if there's security information that could be blacked out. There's a lot of ways it could come out. The business owner themselves could show it and say, hey, you know, my plan wasn't approved. So I appreciate the intent, and you know, I think that would be my preference too. What Councilmember Mink said, but I'm not belts and suspenders. Just saying, hey, we know that we want the MPIA to apply is never a bad thing. So
I'll say from my own perspective, we should always err on the side of transparency, and the whole purpose of this legislation is to make our businesses and community feel safer. And God forbid there is an incident that occurs, I think people would want to see what the plan was. And if that would then violate the spirit of the intention, I think that's problematic for me. And so if this could be addressed in some way in regulation without having an amendment, I'm hearing it could be.
Yeah, so we do this at the county level, just so we're clear. We have facility emergency action plans for all of our county buildings, which are administered within the Office of Emergency Management, where we, tells you the evacuation routes, where your rally points are, what where the general, entry points are, what the understanding that they have the appropriate security, that they're locked, things of that nature. And so, and the way we handle this with those kinds of documents is we end up redacting some of the information out of them for any release, because while the general tone and tenor of a plan is totally reasonable, you don't necessarily want to know which entrances are covered by a camera and which are not, because obviously if you're a bad actor, that's information that's incredibly valuable. If you were going to rob one of these businesses during the off hours, knowing which entrances were covered by cameras would be an incredibly helpful piece of information. And so I think there are certain pieces of information that should be restricted or redacted from a public release for the safety and security of it. You wouldn't want to make the business less safe by virtue of them having to do this public document, but there certainly is a fair and reasonable balance that can be achieved in being transparent while not impugning the safety of the building.
And Ms. Wellens, the motion, the amendment as presented, does it need to be presented in that way or adopted in order to meet the goals that that Dr. Stoddart stated?
I believe the goals could be achieved through regulation and also just through application of the Maryland Public Information Act itself.
Okay. Councilmember Luedeke or Chair Katz, does that change your motion? Do you still want us to vote on it?
You don't have to. I mean, under the existing MPIA, these are covered, right? So it was the motion was to request a cross-reference to it to make it clear, but the law is the law. It already applies. So I can withdraw the motion.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you. Not seeing any other comments from colleagues at this point, and having had very thorough discussion on this, I am going to ask Councilmember Mink.
So sorry. I wanted to raise an amendment that was actually brought previously by Chair Katz and Council Members Stewart and Jawando and Council President Glass for discussion at the full council if possible. I know we want to keep it brief. But it just expands, it doesn't create any limitations. It expands the county executive's ability to potentially pivot as needed as parts are moving. So what it does is to say that the department that is going to make the decision around whether a late night safety plan is accepted, it can be the police. It can also be another department as designated. And so that was an amendment that I support, and I would move to bring that back. The exact language is department means the office of the county executive or one or more offices or departments designated by the county executive. And I think that just allows for a little more flexibility, especially as we're acknowledging that pieces could be moving forward. Thanks.
Okay, motion made by Councilmember Mink.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Stewart. Any conversation?
I can speak to it, sorry. I second it, and I just think it gives more flexibility as we're moving forward. One of the amendments that was accepted by the committee was pulling in other departments in the county to develop these safety plans, and ultimately the language of the amendment does leave it up to the county exec's office to make this decision. So It's just another way of reviewing and seeing like where is the best place for this process to reside. So I would support the amendment.
I supported the amendment in committee, and if we want to make sure that this law is applied fairly and equitably in the eyes of people who are reviewing it, then it needs to be one central person or one central office that's doing that reviewing, and this is the best way to do that. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I too will support it. I believe that during the discussion that we had, we felt that the police had the capacity to do it immediately. But I do believe that it's ultimately should be the county executive's decision. There was some question whether the community that it'd be done in other ways with other departments, but somebody needs to be in charge. So I'm fine with this, and I think ultimately the county executive in the very beginning is going to have the police do it anyhow. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Jawanda.
Yeah, and I mentioned this earlier, and I want to ask Dr. Stoddard briefly. The way this, I think, would work best is a conversation with the multiple agencies that are involved in community safety, which is not just police.
The intent that I had from, well, the county executive, I should say, I mean, in conversation.
You work for him, it's okay.
Yes. The intent that we had going into this was for it to be a panel review process that I was going to be directly involved in anyway, so this would not change that substantively. And I think that, so we support this change, but just so we're clear. But yes, it's going to be a joint review process with all of the agencies as defined by the bill to make sure that we're all reviewing it, because you're exactly correct. The police have a huge part in community safety, but as we've said with the businesses, there are many other partners involved in that process.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Lutke.
I just want to get some clarification because there are two different pieces in the draft. One that talks about the different collaborative entities that are supposed to work together on this, but there's a separate provision that puts the Department of Police in charge of that. And I want to clarify that this motion is to swap out the police and put it in the county executive's hands. Is that correct? Okay, and the county executive can in fact designate MCPD as the primary authority, correct? Okay, just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Very good. There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor of the amendment, and that is unanimous. I'm looking around. No other comments made. Important conversation. Captain Reed, Dr. Stoddard, thank you for sharing your thoughts and insights. Ms. Wellens, as always, thank you. And with that, Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
A motion first.
Yeah, it's been amended. You're right. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve as amended.
Moved by Councilmember Lutke, seconded by Councilmember Sales. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Lutke?
Yes.
Councilmember Lutke votes yes. Councilmember Mink?
Yes.
Councilmember Mink votes yes. Councilmember Sales?
Yes.
Councilmember Sales votes yes. Councilmember Albornoz?
Yes.
Councilmember Albornoz votes yes. Councilmember Jawando?
No.
Councilmember Jawando votes no. Councilmember Katz?
Yes.
Councilmember Katz votes yes. Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart votes yes. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez votes yes. Councilmember Balcom?
Yes.
Councilmember Balcom votes yes. Councilmember Friesen?
No.
Councilmember Friesen votes no. Councilmember Glass?
Yes.
Councilmember Glass votes yes.
That is 9-2. Thank you, everybody. Thank you both again, and thank you, Ms. Wellens. Next is expedited bill, final reading on expedited bill 3022, buildings, demolition or removal. The Economic Development Committee recommends enactment with amendments. I'll turn it over to the chair of the Economic Development Committee.
Yes, this is actually a very straightforward bill. Shouldn't require too much comments. Oh, I'm so sorry. Bill 3022 seeks to amend Section 8-27 of the code titled Demolition or Removal of Buildings. The purpose of this bill is to address situations where buildings can be substantially removed except for a small wall, yet enabling people to avoid the need for a demolition permit. On that site, a contractor can then rebuild what is for all practical purposes as new home, which then can market and sell as such without having to obtain a permit for new constructions. Instead, the permit they do apply for is for alterations or renovations. When this happens, the contractor is not required to provide a guarantee for a new home. This bill was actually introduced in the previous council, and then when this new council showed up in December, our amazing council member, Marilyn Balcom, said, let's rescue it. And she decided to move it forward. The bill seeks to ensure that when a building is substantially demolished, a demolition permit will be required, and any home rebuilt on that site will require a new construction permit. Applying for a demolition permit triggers certain obligations on the part of the applicant, including a requirement that water supply and other utilities are properly disconnected, compliance with safeguards to evade any pest control issues, or any negative environmental impacts. These same safeguards do not apply to alteration permits. In addition, alteration permits do not cover stormwater management. The committee recommendation was unanimous, and the Economic Development Committee recommended to reclassify the bill as a non-expedited, in which case it will become effective 91 days after enactment and signing by the county executive instead of immediately upon signing by the county executive. And Bill 3022 will amend the definition of demolish so that it will mean not only the tearing down of an entire building or structure, but also tearing down 67% or more of first-story exterior walls of a one-family or two-family dwelling unit. Basement and cellar walls will not be considered exterior walls for purposes of measuring the 67% of wall removal. With that, I'll yield back to the council president.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'll turn it over to the bill sponsor, Ms. Balcom.
Thank you. And in her fashion, Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez did a great job in describing the bill. And yes, it was initially introduced by Councilmembers Reamer and Hucker, and it has since been co-sponsored by Councilmembers Katz, Stewart, Sales, and myself. So this is, it's an important bill for two reasons. One is the demolition, and the other is the rebuild. And there have been some really egregious examples of buildings that were taken down, all except for one tiny little wall in the basement. And a whole new house was rebuilt without a demolition permit or without a rebuild permit. So this just corrects that. From a safety perspective, as the chair presented, for demolition, there are serious safety concerns that have to happen during a demolition. And without this bill, those things have happened in the past. And then the rebuild, someone could purchase this new home, assuming it's a brand new building, and not have a new building, not have a new house warranty. So this covers that as well. And I also want to just mention that in drafting the bill in the first place and then reviewing it again, I talked with the Maryland Builders Association, and they're interested in these protections because the vast majority of home builders follow these rules already, and it's really bad actors that don't. And so I would appreciate approval of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Balcom. The Economic Development Committee again. Oh, Ms. Coney, is there anything that we missed?
Nothing missed, but I did want to just point out when we had the committee discussion, we didn't have the fiscal impact statement ready. So I just wanted to call out the fact that it's in your packet at circles 14 to 15.
Okay. Taking a look at that. And we have an Economic Development Committee recommendation. And so, Madam Clerk, Mr. Feldman, would you like to comment?
Thank you, President. No, we'd just like to thank Councilmember Malcolm and the Economic Development Committee for storing the bill that was introduced by Tom Hooker and former Councilmember Reamer.
Very good. Thank you. Madam Clerk, if you call the roll.
Councilmember Lukey?
Yes.
Councilmember Lukey votes yes. Councilmember Mink?
Yes.
Councilmember Mink votes yes. Councilmember Sales?
Yes.
Councilmember Sales votes yes. Councilmember Albornoz?
Yes.
Councilmember Albornoz votes yes. Councilmember Tawando?
Yes.
Councilmember Jawando votes yes. Councilmember Katz?
Yes.
Councilmember Katz votes yes. Councilmember Stewart?
Yes.
Councilmember Stewart votes yes. Councilmember Fana Gonzalez?
Yes.
Councilmember Fana Gonzalez votes yes. Councilmember Balcom?
Yes.
Councilmember Balcom votes yes. Councilmember Friesen?
Yes.
Councilmember Friesen votes yes. Councilmember Glass?
Yes.
Councilmember Glass votes yes.
And that is unanimous for Councilmember Balcom's first piece of legislation. Congratulations, and thank you all, Office of Consumer Protection. Colleagues, we're now going to go to a series of work sessions, and the first work session before us is a follow-up conversation on compensation and OPEB, and Mr. Howard and some executive department leaders will be joining us as well. Mr. Howard? Or I'll turn it over to, Chair
No,
Stewart.
it's okay. Thank you. The Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee met on May 5th to receive an update on the development of the long-term OPEB funding policy. As next steps in this process, the committee unanimously recommends adopting 2 provisions as part of the FY24 operating budget resolution. The intent of the resolution provisions is to both ensure the timely review and adoption of an updated policy and ensure that resources are available in FY24 to provide any required pre-funding increase. The committee's recommendation does not impact the FY24 funding levels for OPEB as recommended by the executive and supported by the council on April 25th. Before I turn it over to Mr. Howard, I just want to give some short background on, this is all in your packets. On March 2nd, the GO committee met to discuss updated OPEB funding policy options for Montgomery County government. At the work session, the committee supported several key elements of an updated policy with an understanding that additional work was needed in reviewing investment rate of return assumptions as well as some of the internal mechanisms needed for a final policy. And you can see what we included in the packet. Also, during the March 2nd work session, the council staff had proposed using a 6.5% investment rate. The committee had adopted a 7.5% rate. However, council staff had proposed using a 6.5% rate, and the county exec staff had proposed a 7.5% rate. Since then, the investment advisor for the Consolidated Retiree Health Benefit Trust Board has updated their projections on the rate of return over the next 10 years, and so staff and the GO committee is now comfortable recommending a 7.5% long-term rate of return. And with that background, I'll turn it over back to the chair.
And I'll turn it over to Mr. Howard.
Thank you very much, Chair Stewart, and there's not much to add. You've kind of done a great summary of what the committee's discussion was. There's no funding decision in front of you today, and there's not a final policy that will be coming later in the fall, so there'll be an opportunity for the full council to review and weigh in on the final policy. I do want to thank the executive branch staff, who, as always, have been great partners in working through some of the different components in working on this policy. And the 2 budget resolution provisions that Councilmember Stewart mentioned, the first one would be to require the executive to submit to the council no later than October 1st a draft OPEB funding policy developed in collaboration with council staff and the county's actuarial advisors that is based on the following elements: closed amortization, an 85% funded ratio target, a maximum 15-year time frame to reach the funding target, and a 7.5% investment rate of return assumption. The draft policy can include options for decision points on different policy components, because there may be some different things that first the GO committee and the full council will need to weigh in on how the policy looks and how it plays out. And also the language notes that alternatives that allow the county to achieve an 85% target funded ratio sooner than 15 years should also be considered. And the purpose of that is to hopefully get to the point where we can start using the OPEB trust to pay for all the current year retiree health benefit costs, which would then over the long term free up resources to use for other purposes in the operating budget. The second provision is to indicate the council's intent to utilize at least $3.5 million in FEMA reimbursement funds, assuming sufficient funds are received by the county for additional OPEB pre-funding for county government in FY24 based on the final approved OPEB funding policy. Any additional OPEB pre-funding beyond what is appropriated by this resolution would need to be approved by the council as a supplemental or special appropriation. So this is just, expressing the council's intent. It's not formalizing any action. And it also notes that using FEMA reimbursement, which is one-time revenue, for OPEB pre-funding is consistent with the council's fiscal policies. And so with that, I will turn it back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the executive staff for being here and for your due diligence to all these issues, and of course to the Government Operations Committee for your work. I don't see any comments or questions right now, so we'll continue this discussion. There we go. Next, and you can all stay there because we got a few more items. Next is a work session on the FY24 recommendations for the Revenue Stabilization Fund, and I'll turn it back over. Oh, okay. There we go, Mr. Howard.
Yeah, thank you. For this one, this discussion did not go to committee, and this stems from the April 11th overview discussion we had with the full council, where we mentioned there were some proposed changes to the Revenue Stabilization Fund for FY24 by the county executive, and that we would bring it back to the full council for discussion and decision before taking final action on the budget. So just to kind of recap what this issue is the county's reserves consist of two primary components. The first is the Revenue Stabilization Fund, and the second component is the General Fund Undesignated Reserves. And as you know, together the policy is for the combined amount in these two components to equal 10%. The RSF is rated in county code, and it's best understood as the county's rainy day fund. The law states that the county must make an annual mandatory contribution to the RSF that is the greater of A, 50% of excess revenues received in any given year, and that's the provision that we'll be talking about this year, or B, an amount equal to the lesser of 0.5% of adjusted gross revenues and the amount needed to obtain a total reserve of 10%. The RSF is more restrictive, as I mentioned, than the undesignated general fund reserves. The council can only use, the county can only use RSF funds by an affirmative vote of 7 council members after a public hearing. And the council is expected to receive an update on relevant economic indicators and seek the executive's recommendation before approving the use of any RSF funds. And under the RSF, the use of it is restricted to appropriations that have become unfunded during the fiscal year. On the other hand, the undesignated general fund reserves is a balance of money that sits in the reserves and can be used for supplemental or special appropriations as needed throughout the year. As part of the executive's recommended budget, they do estimate ending FY23 at 14% reserves, as we've talked about before, with 10% in the RSF and 3.9% in the unrestricted general fund reserves. And to achieve the allocation that they recommended, the executive does recommend the council approve a one-time deferral of the FY23 mandatory contribution to the RSF due to excess revenues. And we provided some explanation the executive branch had shared when they submitted the budget, and that was discussed back in April. And the table on page 2 of the staff report shows what the difference is between doing the one-time deferral and not doing the one-time deferral would mean. The totals in the reserves are the same in each scenario. The only difference is how much is put in the RSF versus in the undesignated general fund reserves. In addition, the county executive has requested that the Department of Finance, Office of Management and Budget, and the Office of the County Attorney work with the council during FY24 to review and determine if any updates to the Revenue Stabilization Fund law should be considered. If the council chooses to implement this provision, it would need to include language in the budget resolution to do so, and at the bottom of page 2 we provided draft language from the Office of the County Attorney to do this. The staff recommendation is twofold. One, to support the executive's proposed one-time deferral of the mandatory contribution to the RSF in FY23 due to excess revenues. We feel that approving the one-time deferral will provide the county with more flexibility in FY24 without negatively impacting the county's fiscal position. And the second recommendation is that we support a more detailed review of the RSF law during FY24 to determine whether any changes or updates are warranted. As the council has previously done with other fiscal policy elements, it does make sense to periodically review and assess different policies to determine what factors have changed since they were initially implemented and see if any changes are warranted. And I'll turn it back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Vice President Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to executive staff and council staff. I'm going to support this, but I support it with extreme caution. And the extreme caution is that there's two funds here. One fund has lots of restrictions and the other fund really doesn't. And we are presented with a budget that we're going to be making some tough decisions on in the coming days that at this point, by all accounts, is going to have a significant structural deficit. The size of that structural deficit still is yet to be determined, but it came to this body with a $145 million hole in it with no plan, no proposal, no thought of how we're going to address that issue. And so my concern here, and I just want to note it, and I just think we need to think about it, is that we are putting in funding for flexibility that I believe we're likely going to need to address the issue that this budget has put before us. However, if we use that flexibility in a way that exacerbates the problem as opposed to addressing the problem, we are going to be in for a rude awakening. And I just think that it needs to be noted as we make this decision that the flexibility that this is providing must be used in a way that addresses the issues that we have now inherited with a recommended budget that has significant ongoing fiscal challenges that creates problems rather than solves them. And this recommendation will provide some flexibility in order to address that, but only if we are prudent and only if we are thoughtful as we do it. So I'll support it, but I support it with some concern and reservation and ongoing caution as we move forward. And with that, I'll yield back.
Appreciate those comments. As we come into the final week or so of this budget, there are going to be some real tough conversations. There are tough deliberations that are happening right now as we have worked through this budgetary process, and all the straw votes up until date have been unanimous, and we are working to reconcile what we have. And all of that will become clearer in the coming days, but there is certainly work that we need to address moving forward beyond this budget, and appreciate the Council Vice President for echoing those sentiments. Councilmember Jawanda.
Thank you. Just wanted to ask, this has come up, not this direct issue, but related issues about what the right reserve policy is and how we treat it over time. And could the executive branch speak to the process by which, if there is one, you're going to review what changes might need to be made between these two funds? I do think it's something, I'll support that today. I think it makes sense for the flexibility we need this year. But this larger question of there's community confusion around this, there's just the, I think there's council member confusion on this, there's different opinions. So what's the process and how are you looking at this going forward?
Sure. Very good question, Mr. Jawanda. Thank you. We will be working with our FAs along with council staff.
Financial advisors.
Yes, I'm sorry, financial advisors. Sorry. Yes, we will be working with our financial advisors to make sure that the Revenue Stabilization Fund and the undesignated reserves are handled properly in the law, that we have a good policy in place. I have, here's my markup of the RSF. It has about a dozen changes or questions that I've put together since the policy was passed in March of 2021, I believe. And those are things that we'll be talking with the financial advisors about, with OMB, with council staff, and with you all. So we will be vetting any recommendations, any thoughts that we might have. We will be asking the financial advisors what would be the best policies to have. The Government Finance Officers Association is the international organization that many of us belong to. They have their own best practices as well. So we'll be taking those into consideration along with Montgomery County's very specific circumstances and information that we know about how the rating agencies view us and other AAA jurisdictions.
And prior to next year's budget submission.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think, obviously I know GO will care, but I think that this is such a big issue, the entire council, I would love to request that you come back at some point with us, maybe when we do a budget update, Ms. Michelson, or something, that we can engage with you as you're making seeing that markup, once you're ready to share, and you have those conversations. It's just such an important point. We probably all going to come from different places, more aggressive, less aggressive, but we all want the information and to be able to be, using the same information to give feedback. So I appreciate that.
I agree. And I don't think anything is off the table, including the size of the reserve. So we'll talk about that as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
We should be having budget conversations throughout the year, and I look forward to the GO committee further continuing this conversation. Councilmember Ludke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with the sentiments expressed by Council Vice President Friedson, and of course appreciate that regular housekeeping, whether it's policies and procedures, regulations, or statutes, are always welcome. And we should have an eye to that on a regular basis, particularly when it comes to the financial health of our county. But I do have concerns and want, to instill a sense of reservation and careful treading moving forward in this arena. That something may look good in the short term, but isn't really good for us or wise in the long term. And we need to be endlessly cognizant, not just of the here and now, but of the foreseeable future. With that, I yield back to you, Council President.
Thank you. Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you, Mr. President, and appreciate the comments from colleagues. Mr. Trevor, last year was my first time going through the bond rating process as Council President. Council President Glass will be going through that shortly. There was some concern that there had been some policy changes by one or two of the bond rating agencies last year, and fortunately, as was always been the case, the county still is in very good standing. I concur with the recommendations that have been made, but could you just expand a little bit about the connection between the decision we're making today and the bond rating agencies and how it relates?
Yes, absolutely. Good question. Reserves are one of the main indicators that the rating agencies use to determine our creditworthiness, along with everybody else's. Montgomery County has a policy in place, a law in place for the RSF and for the undesignated reserves that substantially treats our revenue base differently than most of the rating agencies. So one of the things that we will look at, and this is partially answering your question, is how we categorize our revenues, what is available for the county council to budget every year, as opposed to how do the rating agencies categorize our revenues, because they're materially different. It's not a negative thing for them to be different. We just need to be cognizant of where the differences are and make sure that we meet requirements that are our legal obligations as the county, but also meet the requirements that the rating agencies are setting using slightly different calculations than we have. So this particular area is just one of many areas that the rating agencies look at us on. It happens to be an area that trips up a lot of jurisdictions around the country, and so it would be an area we would make sure it was bolstered and was where it needed to be once we are finished with pulling together the policy for review next October, November, whenever we're finished with it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Trevor. I yield back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to thank council staff, the Department of Finance, and OMB for your hard work on this, and want to express my support for the executive's one-time deferral for the mandatory contribution to the rent stabilization fund. Just had a question about this occurrence. When did income tax revenues last exceed the approved projections before FY 22 and 23?
We'd have to look that up. I'm sorry.
No.
I think 21 did as well. So
Okay.
yeah. But we'll have to take a look and we'll let you know.
Okay, that would be helpful. And is it reasonable to expect that we may face the same situation next year? And if so, is there anything we can do to maximize reuse for these funds?
May I ask you more about the question that you have?
Yes.
Are you asking, is it likely that we're going to have higher income tax revenues than what we expect right now?
Yes.
Okay. It is not unlikely that we would. The way we do the projections, there's more upside risk than downside risk in a good way. It's slightly more likely that we would get more money than less money the way we do the projections. And that's one of the reasons that we've under forecast for the last couple years at least.
Okay, and I believe we get quarterly reports from the executive about...
Yeah, there is an interagency, it's a council and executive branch group called the Revenue Estimators Group.
Okay.
Many of the people sitting in this table right now are on that group, and some of the people up on your dais are in that group as well. And we do report quarterly. The last one that you received was last night actually.
Okay, all right, so we get those from you quarterly. Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, so colleagues, all those in favor of these recommendations for the Revenue Stabilization Fund? That is unanimous. And also just want to go back, we can take a formal hand vote on the compensation follow-up regarding OPEB. So all those in favor of that recommendation from GO? Very good, thank you. Thank you all. We'll continue that conversation. So the next item is a resolution to appoint a new clerk of the court, which means that I'm getting ahead of myself. The clerk of the council is leaving to become clerk of the entire Maryland judiciary as administrator. So Judy Rupp, you have been a ray of sunshine and of efficiency since you joined us a little less than 2 years ago. And you have helped update and modernize the office of the clerk, and you have seen us through this important transition from a 9-member body to an 11-member body with a majority new and a majority female. You've really helped us get to this really good spot. And I know you came from the judiciary, and you've now spent the last year and a half or so in the council and the legislative branch, and you're going on to go back to the state as administrator for the Maryland judiciary. So you certainly know your separation of powers. I'm not going to ask you which branch you prefer, but I hope you have, I hope that this experience, while helping transition us to this point, has provided you with personal gratification, helping our community as well, seeing the other facets of government and how the laws that we are creating are administered on your side, and provide you with that unique perspective. You want to share any thoughts with us?
First, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be your clerk. It truly has been such a pleasure. I've been inspired by seeing all of what you do to support our communities and the care and concern you display every day for every citizen of Montgomery County. It's just been an extraordinary opportunity to see your dedication, and I thank you for that. I want to thank Marlene and Craig and Selena and the amazing clerk team for all of their help and support. Your future is in great hands with Sarah. She is just amazing, and I know she'll serve you well. It has been such a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and the yeah, applause. The clerk team is fantastic, and they will continue to be fantastic. Councilmember Jawanda.
Just want to briefly say thank you. I have really good seatmates, and you've been one of them, and I know all of us feel just grateful for your care, concern, professionalism, work ethic, which I've seen at the rehab. We shared rehab when I was rehabbing my Achilles in the morning. We would come out sweating together, and just wish you the best as you move back to the judiciary. But thank you, and excited about Sarah too.
Councilmember Albornoz.
Thanks. Couldn't miss this opportunity. I had the opportunity to work my entire year as council president with Judy, and it's a weird job, as council president Glass has learned, but the clerk is so important to making the work seamless, and there's so much that happens behind the scenes. It's only when things are screwed up that people notice, and they never are. It's really extraordinary. So, but we are going to be in great hands, and we do wish you the best. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and especially thank you, Judy. So there is a resolution to appoint Sarah Tenenbaum as the next clerk of the council. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Moved by Councilmember Albanaz, seconded by Vice President Friedson. All those in favor of appointing Sarah Tenenbaum as our next clerk of the council, and that is unanimous. No turning back now, Sarah. Okay, on to the consent calendar. May I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Lutke, seconded by Councilmember Sales. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. And with that,